When one of the most famous men on the planet walked out of his own restaurant and dropped to his knees on a sidewalk in Orlando, Florida, nobody understood what they were seeing. It was Thursday, September 18th, 2025, 7:41 p.m., West Church Street, downtown Orlando. The air smelled like rain that had not arrived yet. Heavy, electric. The kind of September evening in Florida where the sky turns the color of a bruise before it opens. He was 7 feet and 1 inch tall, 325 pounds. He had to turn sideways to get through the restaurant door. He wore a black polo shirt and dark slacks. His shoes were size 23. He was not causing a scene. He was not performing for anyone. He was kneeling on a concrete sidewalk beside a man nobody else would touch. Around him, 12 people stood in a loose circle, phones raised, recording. Not one of them had moved toward the man on the ground. Not one of them had spoken to him. They just watched and recorded and waited. The man on the ground was named Gerald Tuitt. He was 61 years old. He had collapsed against a parking meter at 7:38 p.m., 3 minutes before Shaq walked out. Gerald was a bus driver for the Orange County Transit System. He had worked a double shift. He was on his way to his car. His left hand was pressed against his chest. His right hand was flat on the sidewalk. He was conscious, barely. The ambulance was 22 minutes away. Shaq sat down beside him on the concrete, all 7 feet and 1 inch of him folding down like a building, deciding to kneel. He took Gerald's right hand in both of his. He said 4 words. He said, "I am right here." Gerald looked up at him. His eyes were not focusing, but he turned his head toward the voice. What happened in the next 22 minutes on West Church Street in Orlando, Florida, and what Gerald Tuitt whispered before he lost consciousness, would pull Shaquille O'Neal into a 3-week search that ended with a discovery nobody in that circle of 12 people with their phones raised could have predicted. Stay with us through this entire video, because what Shaq finds at the end of that search, what Gerald had been carrying alone for 11 years, will change the way you think about every person you have ever walked past on a sidewalk without stopping. And by the time it's over, you will not be able to shake it. But to understand why Shaq walked out that door at exactly 7:41 p.m., you have to go back. You have to go back past 4 NBA championships, past the business empire, past the doctorate in education from Barry University, past all of it. You have to go back to a sidewalk in Newark, New Jersey, in the fall of 1979, where a 7-year-old boy watched his mother stop for a stranger who had fallen on the steps of a laundromat on Clinton Avenue. She was carrying groceries. She put the groceries down. She sat on the steps beside the woman. She stayed for 40 minutes. Shaquille O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972, in Newark, New Jersey. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, raised him with a love that expressed itself through action. Not speeches. Not lessons. Just action. She put the groceries down. Every time. She always put the groceries down. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, was a sergeant in the United States Army. Philip had one thing he said about the people who fall. He said, "The ones who fall in public are not the ones who need the least help. They are the ones who held on the longest before they fell. You stop, you stay." That is the whole instruction. Shaq was 11 years old the first time he heard that. He was 53 years old on West Church Street in Orlando when his body acted on it without asking his brain first. Now Gerald Tuitt, 61 years old. Bus driver, Orange County Regional Transit Authority, Route 18, Semoran Boulevard to downtown Orlando. He had worked for the Transit Authority for 19 years. He was one of those drivers the regulars knew by name. Estelle Watkins, 74, stood by the door every Tuesday. She called him Mr. G. Marcus Ford, 28. Earbuds always in, always nodded at Gerald when he boarded. Patricia and her daughter Sasha, 9 years old, who brought Gerald a plastic-wrapped piece of cake on his birthday every March. Because Patricia had once seen him give up his own lunch break to wait with an elderly passenger who had gotten confused about her. "Stop." Gerald wore his uniform until he got to the car. Dark blue pants. Light blue shirt with the OC Transit logo on the left chest. He had a habit of unbuttoning the top button the second his shift ended. He had not unbuttoned it yet when he fell. His apartment was on Mercy Drive in West Orlando. One bedroom, third floor. He had been there for 11 years. The elevator had been broken for 4 months. He climbed the stairs without complaining. His neighbors on the third floor, a young couple named Dario and Keisha Mendez, 27 and 25, had offered 3 times to help him with groceries. He always said no thank you. He was fine. He was not fine. Gerald had been having chest pain for 6 weeks. Not constant. Coming and going. He had an appointment at the Orlando VA Medical Center on Pershing Avenue on October 7th. He had made the appointment. He had not told anyone about the chest pains. Not his supervisor at the transit authority. Not his neighbor Dario. Not his daughter, Renee Tuitt Barnes, 34 years old, who called every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. and asked how he was doing. He told Renee he was fine. Every Sunday. Fine? He had also not told Renee something else. Something larger. Something he had been carrying alone for 11 years. We will get to that. At 7:38 p.m. on Thursday, September 18th, 2025, Gerald Tuitt pressed the palm of his left hand against his chest while walking past a parking meter on West Church Street and went down. At 7:40 p.m., 12 people had gathered. None of them moved toward him. One woman, a young woman in a white blazer, Carla Jimenez, 29, marketing coordinator, had called 911. The dispatcher said 22 minutes. Carla had said okay and stepped back and raised her phone. At 7:41 p.m., the door of Shaq's restaurant opened. He had been inside finishing a meeting about a menu redesign with his operations manager, a woman named Dina Cole, 44. He stood up to get water. He looked through the window facing West Church Street. He saw the circle of people. He saw the phones. He saw the blue uniform on the ground. He was outside in 7 seconds. The circle opened for him. Not because he asked, because when 7 feet and 325 pounds moves in a direction, spaces appear. He knelt beside Gerald. The concrete was warm from the day's heat. He could smell the Florida air, thick and electric. He took Gerald's hand. He said, "I am right here." Gerald turned his head. Shaq looked at him. He looked at the circle. He looked back at Gerald. He said, "You got a name?" Gerald said, "Gerald." Gerald. "I am not going anywhere." 12 people stood above them with phones. Not one of them came down to the concrete. Not one of them put their phone away. Shaq did not look at them. He looked at Gerald. "Tell me something," Shaq said. "You got somebody I can call?" Gerald closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. He said, "My daughter. What's her name?" "Renee?" "Okay, we're going to call Renee." Gerald's hand tightened on Shaq's. His grip was weaker than it should have been for a man his size. Shaq noticed that. 4 minutes passed. The circle stayed. The phone stayed. The ambulance had not arrived. Somewhere above them, a car radio passed slowly on the cross street. Something old. A melody that did not fit the moment. Then Gerald said something. He said it quietly. Almost too quietly for anyone standing to hear. But Shaq was on the concrete beside him. He heard it. Gerald said, "He would have been 31. Shaq did not respond immediately. He looked at Gerald. He held the hand a little steadier. "I know," Shaq said. He did not know yet. But he said it the way his mother always said things when someone needed to be met where they were. The ambulance arrived at 8:03 p.m., 12 minutes and not 22, because Carla Jimenez had called back a second time and the dispatcher had moved someone faster. The paramedics moved quickly. They asked Shaq to step back. He stepped back. He stood on the sidewalk and watched them work. He stayed until the ambulance left. Then he stood on the concrete for another 2 minutes. The circle had dispersed. The phones were gone. West Church Street had gone back to its Thursday evening business. He went inside. He sat down across from Dina Cole and he said, "I need you to find out who Gerald Tuitt is." She looked at him. "The man outside?" "Yes. Are you okay?" "I need to know who he is." "I need to know about his daughter Renee, and I need to know who was 31. Dana did not ask why. She picked up her phone. That search took 3 weeks. Gerald Tuitt was discharged from Orlando Regional Medical Center on September 22nd. Mild cardiac event, not a full heart attack. He needed rest, medication, a follow-up cardiologist appointment, and to stop working double shifts. The cardiologist told him the last one. He said he understood. He called Renee from the hospital room at 7:02 p.m. on the 22nd. She was already in Orlando. She had driven from Jacksonville the same night he collapsed, arrived at 11 p.m., slept in the waiting room. She was 34 years old and looked like her father around the eyes. She sat beside him and held his hand the same way the big man had held it on the sidewalk. Gerald looked at the ceiling. He said, "There was a man." She said, "I know. I've been trying to find out who he was." She did not know. Yet, what Dina Cole found in 3 weeks was this. Gerald Twitt had a son. Had. Marcus Twitt. Born March 4th, 1994. Marcus had grown up with his mother, Lena, in Daytona Beach, 60 miles east. Gerald and Lena had not stayed together. Gerald had paid child support. He had driven to Daytona every other Saturday for 9 years. He had taught Marcus to fish in Tomoka State Park. He had watched Marcus play basketball in a gym that smelled like sweat and old wood, and he had stood in the bleachers with his hands in his pockets and said nothing because he was not the kind of man who cheered loudly. He was the kind of man who showed up. Marcus Twitt died on April 3, 2014. He was 19 years old. A car accident on US 1 south of Ormond Beach. A Thursday afternoon in April. Sunny day. Wrong way, driver? Marcus was in the passenger seat. He did not survive. He would have been 31 years old on March 4, 2025, 5 months before. Gerald collapsed on West Church Street. Gerald had not spoken Marcus's name out loud to anyone in 11 years. Not to Renee, not to his neighbors, not to Estelle Watkins on Route 18 who brought him cake. He had carried his son's name inside his chest like something held too tightly, like something he was afraid would break if he let it out into the air. On the sidewalk, in the dark, with his left hand pressed against the pain in his chest and his right hand held by a stranger. It came out. He would have been 31. Dina Cole sent Shaq the file on a Tuesday morning. October 7th, 2025. The same day Gerald's VA appointment had originally been scheduled. Shaq read it at his desk in Orlando. He sat very still for a long time. He looked at the photograph Dina had found in a Daytona Beach News Journal article from 2014, a 19-year-old kid with his father's eyes. Smiling at a camera that did not know what was coming, he picked up his phone. He did not call his assistant. He did not call a lawyer or a foundation representative. He called Renee Twitt Barnes directly. Dina had her number. Renee answered on the second ring. Shaq said, "My name is Shaquille. I was with your father on September 18th. Renee went quiet for 3 full seconds. Then she said, "I know who you are." He said, "I need to tell you something your father told me." He told her. He told her the words from the sidewalk. He told her exactly what Gerald had said in the dark, with the electric air and the distant car radio and 12 phones raised above them. He would have been 31. Renee did not respond for 4 seconds. Then she made a sound. It was not a word. It was the sound a person makes when something that has been locked for 11 years suddenly opens. She said very quietly, "He never talks about Marcus." "I know," Shaq said. "He never. Not once in 11 years." "I know." She pressed her hand over her mouth. The sound came through the phone anyway. Shaq waited. He did not speak. He held the phone and let the moment be what it was. After a long time, she said, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "Because your father held my hand for 22 minutes and the only thing he asked for in all that time was that I not go anywhere. He did not ask for anything else. And I thought you should know what he said." Another silence. Outside Shaq's window, Orlando moved through its October afternoon. Traffic. Somewhere, a lawnmower. The ordinary world doing its ordinary things. Renee said, "He doesn't know I know about Marcus. He never told me directly. I found out from my aunt. He doesn't know I know." Shaq was quiet. She said, "He has been carrying that alone." "Yes," Shaq said, "for 11 years. Yes." She exhaled. It was long and slow, and it carried 11 years of her father's silence with it. "Before you go, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from." Whether you are in Orlando or Oakland, in Lagos or London, we read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with one person today. Because somewhere out there, someone is holding something alone. Something with a name they have not said out loud in years. And all they need is one person to say, I am right here. I am not going anywhere. We will see you in the next one.